Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Next Level Coaching with Erin Cotman. And today I have a guest. But before I introduce the guest, I want to make sure that you take a second to like, subscribe, and share this video. So without further ado, I would say a friend, but what's funny is this is our first time actually meeting in person. So first time meeting in person and on the podcast. So Mr. Mario Jovan.
Yes. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm so excited you're here.
This is crazy. I mean, we met. It had to be pre-COVID, just a little bit before.
It was.
So over 5 years, we've been friends.
Yep.
And it's the first
and here we are. And you don't live on the other side of the country either.
3-4 hours away driving. That's the crazy part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I know you.
Yes.
Introduce yourself to the folks.
Yes. Well, my name is Mario Jovan. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. Love being from Cleveland. I love being a Midwestern. So you gotta visit.
I don't know much about the Midwest.
Food is great in Cleveland.
It's cold, ain't it?
It is. Yeah. But however, the lake is awesome. Like in the summertime, just like Chicago. We're like a baby Chicago.
Okay.
Like seriously, yeah.
I feel like there's gonna be somebody in the comments like, baby Chicago.
Very baby Chicago.
Because people say that about Charlotte. Charlotte,
yes,
mini Atlanta.
No, we're not. We're really not. No.
Okay.
But at one point, Cleveland was #1 city for millionaires, black millionaires.
Oh.
And it was bigger than Chicago at one point. Now, I know. See, look at that. Former educator, former nonprofit leader. And I think like the title I would go with today would be like storyteller.
Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah. It's funny because when you said former educator, I was like, that like caught me. Because I wouldn't have thought that you would
say former.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
So
see you already.
So I was like,
yeah.
And we're gonna dive deeper into identity.
Yeah.
Circle back to that because that's interesting to me. But even when you said storyteller, because I can see that part too. But I think it's interesting how we see ourselves versus how others see us. Because for those of us who follow you on the internet and see your newsletters and all of like, if you don't follow Mario on Instagram, you need to, because you always just have these really good insights.
Yeah.
And breakdowns.
Oh, thank you.
So I'm like, to me, you're still an educator.
Yeah.
Because now who you're educating may look different, but I still consider you to be an educator.
You know what? I mean, yeah, so we'll talk about identity. Yeah.
So
yes.
Back up, like really brief. How did we get here where we are?
Yeah. Okay. So I started. I was a teacher. Well, I was in teaching professions in high school actually. Okay. So I was training to become a teacher in high school from 9th grade.
Okay. So you always knew.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there was a program called Teaching Thematics. Absolutely loved it. My senior year of high school, I taught first grade.
Ooh. Everybody, if you've seen the podcast, you know I not like the children.
Because I'm a fan of the podcast, and that's part of my should have been part of my introduction. I absolutely love this podcast. I share it with so many people. But yeah, so I taught first grade, loved it, and then I went to do education at the University of Cincinnati.
Okay.
There, it was really interesting. I was the only black male in my cohort, being at a PWI. Additionally, when I was in high school, I graduated from the same high school my parents graduated from.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So that's cool. And my aunts, everybody graduated from the same high school. So it was a whole bunch of black people that was around when I was becoming a teacher. Fast forward to being in college, being the only black male, the only black person, it just startled me. Like I was like, no. Sure. So I moved to communications, which typically all the black people are.
Right.
And I became an Africana Studies minor, PR minor as well. Loved it, but then caught that education bug my senior year of college while I was TAing for a black male development class by Dr. Abercrombie. He brought in a group of Boy Scouts, and he was like, we need more black men to become teachers. I was like, let me do this. So I applied for Teach for America's first deadline, got in, moved to Charlotte, taught 7th grade English language arts.
That's what we have in common.
Yes, and I loved it. Absolutely loved it. But the part that I loved the best was storytelling. That was cool for me. I absolutely love students being able to tell their own stories, as well as them being able to listen to stories and read stories from people that look like them. And from there, I realized I was the only black male I was the first black male teacher for many of my students. Even though in that school at Ransom Middle School, there were a lot of black male teachers. So I did not know that there were only 2% of us nationally. So my second year, and then also at the same time, what got my attention that I was doing my second year was all of the shootings and the police shootings and stuff. So I wanted to support young black boys and realize the impact I was making in their lives. So I wanted to have more black men become educators. So I left education to go into started a nonprofit called Profound Gentlemen. Did that work for 8 years. 700 mil.
First really got to know you was through your work with Profound Gentlemen.
And I don't even know how. I think it was through Charles. He was like, yo, yes, because he was one of our impact leaders, and he was like, yo, like I have somebody who I think will be really good if you're talking about like wanting us to learn more about instructional coaching. But then COVID had hit, and we did not know how to navigate this. But we was in talks about all of that. Coming for one of our retreats to teach our guys and everything, and then just things went wild. From there, I realized that I really love supporting leaders. The support that I receive having a leadership coach, I realized other folks, more specifically BIPOC leaders, did not have that same type of experience. So I wanted to create that similar experience. In space. And then I realized, again, being the only. I don't like being. I always find being the only to be a problem. So I'm always trying to like expand whenever I'm the only. So I found out I was one of the only black males in both. I did 2 coaching classes to get my coaching certification. I was the only black male in both of those. Realized, need to expand. And I ended up starting Messy Roots so that I could be able to create a space for more BIPOC leadership coaches.
So let me ask this. Why do you think that there are less BIPOC leadership coaches in general?
Well, I think one, we don't know that for oftentimes like that's what we're doing when we're calling it mentorship. So we have to define the difference between mentorship and coaching. I think both of them matter. I always talk about that on my page. You should have a mentor and a coach. I just don't think that oftentimes BIPOC leaders have the language to talk about that I want to get into coaching and actually put that on their resume too.
So what would you say is the difference between a mentor and a coach?
A mentor is somebody who you have that you want to walk in their same footsteps, like do the same thing, the same things that they're doing. For a coach, we are walking beside you. We're almost like a GPS system. We can help guide you, but if you turn left, we got to go left with you.
I tell my GPS, shut up.
I know.
I know where I'm going.
That's
Thank
right.
you.
That's
You're
right. And as a coach, you might hear that.
You might hear that. That's good. I love that. Walking beside you versus
in the same
footsteps. I love that. Okay, so you get your coaching certification that leads you to see this gap, right? You create Messy Roots. Okay. So what have you learned, I guess, from Messy Roots even?
I learned there's 2 things. One, there's 2, and I've been really thinking about this honestly for the past like month, which January was wild, right? So I've been thinking about humanizing humans, because like when you use the word human, this was also in a sermon I was listening to today too, but when you humanize people, or when people use the word I'm only human, it's usually considered a negative thing.
Right.
But in all actuality, being human is just like so dope, right? And we need to bring that back of like actually seeing people. I compare it to like sometimes when a dog sees another dog, they might wag their tail. Sometimes they may bark at each other, but for the most part, they're interested, in knowing about that other dog. And for humans, we just walk right past each other. And so I want us to be able to begin to have those conversations, and I realized from my work that people are just really dying to have relationships and connection and interaction with each other. The other thing that I realized is I love sociology. Communication is kind of like sociology adjacent. So I really love the idea of understanding how people navigate throughout the world, and specifically BIPOC leaders navigate throughout the world. How do they utilize their story to be able to share a message? And to think about what does it look like to lead in spaces that definitely, as we consider like right now what's going on, that typically we're not able to be in.
I would say that actually kind of leads me to my question about like, what would you say are some of the challenges for BIPOC leaders? And then I think what makes us uniquely positioned, right, to be effective.
I think one of the things that people are talking about when it comes to the absence, quote unquote, of diversity, equity, inclusion, which you can't erase us. You can't erase diversity, you can't erase equity, you can't erase inclusion. It's innate, it's inside of us. When I think about that erasure, one of the other words that people are using is connecting with those who are proximate to the problem. And I think that's our gift and our curse. So sometimes, like, I think I'm an artist as well. And so
dimensional.
Yes. So when you're close to whatever you're painting, you can't fully see if you're actually doing it right or not. So that you have to back out to be able to actually see.
Problem. I don't have any artistic
see, and that's the reality of it, because it's like that the proximity helps you to be great at your work. But sometimes when you're too close, you can't see the full picture. And I think that that's the biggest thing that we see with BIPOC leaders and BIPOC coaches is the fact that
we're
they
just
can't.
So in it.
That they're not seeing the impact that they're making, so they're drained. So we're just overworking, not necessarily seeing the impact that we are actually having because we haven't panned out a little bit. So I think proximity is our gift and our curse. It's a struggle for me too, though, because I see that for myself. Like, oftentimes when I was leading Profound Gentlemen, that was some scary work because I was 24 when I started that. You know, so thinking about leading other people, specifically supporting, and I would say facilitating people's development that were older than me, there were some mistakes that I definitely made. But also being so knee deep into the work, in that, you know, that again, proximity, you just want to see it, you know, succeed. So now we're going on 10 years of Profound Gentlemen, and me and my business partner, he lives here in Atlanta, actually. But one of the things that was so funny, because him and I both thought that the organization wouldn't get to 10 years because we would have solved the problem by now. The reality is, like, it's a long time. So they're celebrating the 10th anniversary and everything. And it's so funny because it's like, we didn't think it would take this long.
Two questions have just come to my head. One, you talked about like the burnout for BIPOC leaders. Do you think our needs are different? Like, as far as like to avoid that burnout? Given that I think our lens is different too, and like what we're carrying is different, I'm curious if the, not solution, but the way that you balance that burnout looks different. Maybe? I don't know.
I think...
Because part of me is like, maybe that's part of like the need for even like messy roots in communities that are similar. So that because if your space that you're leading in each and every day, like, you need that, to me, like, you maybe need another community to help you be able to like process some of what you're experiencing day to day.
That's real. Like, I'm wondering, you know, see, I've had the privilege, and I call it a privilege, of working with majority BIPOC folks. So I haven't really worked with a lot of non-melanated individuals. So
that leads me to my other question.
Really.
So if I am right, so I'm thinking about, even when I think about like my clients, right? Most of my clients are BIPOC school leaders, right? And so I'm thinking about, though, what might be the benefit for someone who's not a person of color to be like, actually,
yes,
I'm going to invest specifically in a BIPOC leader.
Yeah.
Especially if I'm leading.
Yes. So what's funny about
and
that?
And servicing kids.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Brown and Black kids.
What's funny about that is just like teaching, it's the same thing for coaching, where a white person benefits from having a teacher of color. A white leader benefits from having a BIPOC leadership coach. So I think it's so funny, and part of that benefit is them being it's really, again, panning out, right? Because I think we all live in our own worlds, and I think in order to find respite, we have to somewhat go into our world. And sometimes we have to step out of it, right? Like, it just depends on what you need. So to answer like that first question and congruent with the second one, I think like for me, you have to know what you need in that moment. Like, I'm not a person that, like, I don't prefer to vacation somewhere else. I like to vacation at home because I like the comfort of my own home. Yeah. I love just being 2 weeks in my house. There's probably some things that I needed to get done in my home. I mentioned earlier about tenants and stuff like that as well. And I think that for all of us, definitely as leaders, you have to know the difference between the two. You have me just thinking about it being just such a delicate balance. Yes. A delicate balance of what do I need in this moment, which may look different today, which may look different next week, but knowing what that balance is. Yeah. But I like the idea of like sometimes you need to step into certain spaces and sometimes you need to step out of those spaces. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Okay, so here's another question I have. Okay, so I wanted to know where, as a coach, how do I leverage my identity while also leveraging the identity of those that I'm coaching? Yeah, I think this is the thing that's the most important as relates to Messy Roots. You know, we talk about it as leadership culture for social impact. And so obviously with social impact, it's all about being proximate to the problem. And being able to be proximate to the problem, you have to know who you are. That foundation is so important. What is your story? And our story is ever evolving from last week to this week, from having a kid, from having, nieces and nephews. All of those things are going to impact the way that you show up. And it's important to reflect on that. So continue to work on your story over and over and over again. I look at mine every quarter. That's kind of like my quarterly type of like setback. It's like, or step back? Yeah, step back. It's kind of sort of looking at my story. What has changed? What do I want to continue to add to it? And one of the biggest things for me, I think, is, I don't know, I'm still thinking about it, whether it's like a gift or a flaw, but I don't like being the victim of anything. So I'm always like this person that's an overcomer. So I am reflecting on whether I am getting too fast out of things, that I have been through. I would wonder what that does to your identity as an overcomer. Like, it's great to be able to overcome, but if I'm not sitting in the thing, so that's what I like to do quarterly, is what it's like for me to kind of like sit in it, and be able to tell and be able to share my story with my own self. Same thing for the coaches, or for the coaches and our coachees, is that I push my coachees to share their story with me. That's in the first conversation that we're having. I was gonna say that's the first either conversation or PD that I do with clients, is like this values identity exercise. Yes. Yes. Values is important too. Yeah, because that informs how you may look at something. How you make decisions. Yeah. And specifically, what is your definition for that value? Yes. Because you might be saying, well, our values might be this. We may have the same word, but how we interpret it and what it actually means to us may be completely different. That's how I see it. Yeah, because creativity, like, okay, so top three, like, I'm big in my faith and spirituality, but that's not a word in my top three. Creativity is. But so the way that I think about spirituality and faith is through creativity.
Got it.
You know?
Okay, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tell people all the time they need to revisit that. And I like that you're saying quarterly, and I think that's something I'm gonna implement because I've been doing it less often.
Yeah.
But I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think especially given current times. Like being able, to
it's
like,
a lot.
It's a lot. It's a lot
it's a lot. And the thing is too is I've been reading The New Negro by Elaine Locke. And I thought it was really interesting. Well, first I was reading James Baldwin's Fire Next Time, really good book. I recommend that definitely for these times. And then it was like, oh, James Baldwin's mentor was Elaine Locke. So I was like, okay,
going over there.
Let me look at see what he was talking about. So I haven't finished it yet, but understanding is so interesting because we are experiencing a Renaissance period right now.
Yeah.
And it would make sense. The Renaissance was around this time, and then is that 1900s, 19? I don't know, 19. Yeah, 1900s. Yeah, I'm thinking about the centuries. I always get my centuries messed up, but the 1900s, yes.
We were English teachers.
Okay, right? We don't know. So Harlem and thinking about the identity there, identity politics and respectability politics. I mean, all of that played a part in the way that we saw ourselves as Black people, and I think we are having a revisiting lesson from our ancestors about how we need to show up as Black people, and as people of color in general. So Renaissance was all about identity. I think one of the things that's really interesting for me as a Black queer male is the fact that when it come down to post-Renaissance, how our voices were silent, and and still continue to be. So it's like almost over 100 years. Elaine Locke was a Black queer male, but he was literally the main person to talk about how do we show up, as Black people during this time, and how do we continue to do that. So the fact that our voices have been, in a sense, silenced, makes it really interesting. One of the things I looked up, I love my HBCUs. I didn't go to one, but I'm always supporting them. There has only been an interim president that was a queer person.
Interesting.
Yeah, never permanent. As president
just
of
interim.
HBCUs. Yeah. So when we think about these type of things and identity and us really focusing on what I've been focused on is looking at DEI inward in our own community, and how do we show up for women? How are we showing up for people living with disabilities, queer folks? Like, all of that matters. Like, we don't have to worry about the external.
What other people are doing. Let's get this. Like, it's almost like the in-house first.
Let's do this. Yeah. And that's what Harlem was all about.
Yeah.
It was putting ourselves in a bubble. In Harlem, the Renaissance happened. In Chicago and so many different areas, and it's like, it seems like we're experiencing that all over again. So identity is going to matter. What I'm hoping when we get, through this, as we get through this period, that we see everyone for who they are. And obviously the pendulum will go back and forth, but at the same time, like, we're always going to add a new element, and it should get better. And I think that I want us to swell in the way that we, see this person as Black. Yeah.
Well, I thank you for always showing up.
Yeah,
I think that you provide such a necessary voice in this work, in this world. And so I appreciate how much you just show up, say the thing.
Appreciate it.
And you're very Mario.
I do. I like to have fun with it because people be so daggone.
Yeah, you have to be a little.
They be like mean, and they, oh God, be like, oh my God, like, people are never gonna learn from something that, from somebody that's just like.
It's like kids. You gotta add a little pizzazz to it.
Yes.
Yeah. How do people keep up with you and what you're doing and all the things?
Well, I think one, visiting mariojovan.com, messyroots.org. That on Instagram as well. No Twitters.
What about Substack?
Oh, I am on Substack. Yeah, so
The good stuff is on Substack.
Messy Roots. Yeah, because I be providing like templates and stuff.
That's what I'm
So
saying.
Messy Roots on Substack. I love Substack. It's so good. And I see a lot more people are starting to come to it.
Yeah, Bree don't want to talk about Substack yet.
we're having a lot more. I mean, we've had our largest growth this past week. We had over 60 people join our Substack this past week. Yeah, and I don't know where these folks. I mean, literally, and they're building profiles. So I'm making sure they ain't bots, and they're not. Like these are real people. These are real people.
So Substack is a good spot for you. Okay, messyroots.com.
Messyroots.org.
Yes. And then at Messy Roots on Instagram.
Yes, at Messy Roots.
Okay.
Yes. And at Mario Jovan on Instagram.
At Mario Jovan on Instagram. Yeah. All of this will be in the show notes, so you can get all of this stuff. I thank you so much for taking the time to come. Yes. I feel like we got to sign you back up for season 3. Just have like a part 2.
You know, reoccurring guests.
There we go. Yes. There we go. Thank you guys so much for tuning into another episode of Next Level Coaching. Again, like, subscribe, share, and comment. And we will see you next time. Woo. Thank you.